creator of music is the composer, an artist who can express his thoughts and emotions through music. He finds in the symphony orchestra a most versatile instrument for his creation. Music is an international language, and composers write an international script, which all musicians of the orchestra can read and all the conductors can interpret. The conductor is, in a way, the musician who plays symphonic music by using the entire orchestra as an instrument. He plays this exciting instrument with gestures which are signals for the musicians. With these signals, the conductor blends the tones of the orchestra to produce rhythms and harmonies that, in his opinion, best express the composer's creation. The symphony orchestra wasn't always as large as the one you've just heard. In fact, it grew to its present size from a small group of 5 players, the string quintet, sometimes called the grand quintet, composed of 2 violins, a violoncello, a double bass, and a viola. The string quintet is a complete musical family which can play from the highest notes on the violin, down through the viola, and the cello, to the double bass, which plays the lowest notes of the string group, all the way down to the bottom of the scale. So you can see that with this wide range of notes, the possibilities for these 5 instruments are almost limitless, and much music has been written or arranged for them. Like this familiar Little Night Music by Mozart. One day, the composers felt that more volume and intensity could be achieved if each of these players was not an individual, but a whole section. And so the first violinist became the head of the whole first violin section. And the second violinist also became the head of his own section. And so did the viola player. He and the cellist also became heads of their sections. And even at the lowest end of the string scale, a whole section emerged with 4, 8, and sometimes even more bass violins playing harmony to the other strings. And so, from 5 stringed instruments, a whole string orchestra emerged. This string orchestra became the basis of all orchestral music through the 17th and the early 18th centuries. Of course, there were other instruments known besides strings, like flutes, oboes, and trumpets. But when these instruments played with the orchestra, they first appeared only as soloists, as in Bach's so-called Second Brandenburg Concerto. In this concerto, Bach featured not only one violinist as soloist, but he added 3 wind soloists, the oboe, the flute, and the trumpet. The different tone colors of these wind soloists provided a beautiful contrast for the full string orchestra. And this contrast and variety of sounds became the first step towards a modern symphony orchestra. Here's why. It is not so easy to tell the difference between the timbre of a violin, a viola, or even a cello. But no one could fail to notice the difference in the sound of the clarinet and a bassoon, or between them and a French horn. When composers added woodwinds and horns to the orchestra, they made the most of this difference in timbre instead of range alone. Notice how Wagner uses these instruments in his Siegfried Idyll. The strings sing the melody, and the horns and the woodwinds support them with colorful harmonies. Here, he sneaks in the horn as soloist. And there he plays with the different colors of woodwinds and horns. When composers began to look for even richer sounds, for volume as well as brilliance, they found it in the third family of instruments of the orchestra, in the brasses, which were borrowed from the military bands. We've already heard this one, the trumpet, in the Bach concerto. Another type of brass instrument is the trombone, playing different notes in the scale with the help of a slide. The trombone plays deeper and richer tones, with the tuba expanding the range of the brasses at the low end of the scale. Notice that these instruments have a heavy, noble quality. The brass choir of today's symphony orchestra is usually made up of 3 trumpets, 3 or 4 trombones, a tuba, and a quartet of French horns, which are closely related in tone to the woodwinds. Listen next to the opening of Mendelssohn's popular Wedding March, played by woodwinds and strings alone. Notice how the brass adds body and depth to the woodwinds and strings. The orchestra is now almost complete. Only one element is missing, and that is rhythm. This is provided by the percussion section of the orchestra. All instruments which can be clapped, struck, or tapped are called percussion instruments. Now we have them all the parts of the symphony orchestra. Very often they are seated in a special way, as we see here. The first violins, the second violins, the violas, the cellos, the bass viols, the percussion instruments, the brasses, including the horns, which serve as a bridge to the woodwinds. And now let's hear how the French master of orchestration, Hector Berlioz, utilized the different choirs of the symphony orchestra to achieve effects of power and exuberance in his Roman Carnival. The conductor has studied the score and now commands the attention of all players. His is the challenging task to recreate music of enormous variety of sound, color, and dexterity by a skillful utilization of all parts of the modern symphony orchestra.